Lovely. And I should say as well that if anyone wants captioning on, let me know. We are just going to perform the poem rather than showing it on the screen. So if you do struggle with hearing and you'd like me to enable captions, then just let me know in the chat, and I can absolutely do that. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We're so glad you could join us tonight for this really special event. We're coming together to celebrate poetry to commemorate Holocaust Memorial Day. We have a really powerful lineup of poets for you this evening, sharing stirring work that bears witness to profound loss, yet also resilience in the face of persecution. Headlining is the poet Viv Fogel, who will read from her new collection, Imperfect Beginnings, laying bare to the intergenerational trauma stemming from the Holocaust, spanning wartime through to adoption, exile, and homecoming. We'll also hear from the urgent voices of Barsa and Beth Brooks, who are reading from the protest anthology Demos Rising. This one. This also fundraised for Amnesty International. And it's giving voice to refugee and exile experiences, both past and present. And it's our honour to feature renowned poet George Szirtes, who will share deeply affecting poems drawing from his own family surviving persecution firsthand. Through verse both heavy and hopeful, tonight these writers collectively call us to remember so we can build a more just and compassionate world. And all proceeds today will go to the vital work of Doctors Without Borders, or MSF. So thank you so much for donating this evening. Really appreciate it. We thank you for coming together in this mission. It's really important to support each other and those who are most vulnerable. And before we kick off, I wanted to ask Viv what Holocaust Memorial Day means to you, but also how it might feel a little bit different this year.
Yeah, it feels very different this year because of what's been happening, Israel's response to Hamas and the whole Gaza situation. So it's the first time I've actually felt a discomfort around openly talking about Holocaust Memorial Day. I mean, I come from a family where a lot of my family were killed in the camps, and as I think George is too. I'm not sure, but you'll say that, George. But I'm increasingly aware of people's views against the Israeli government, mine too, being a lefty. I'm horrified, I'm ashamed. And the only way I could kind of condone this on some level, not condone Israel, the government, not the people, but the talking about Holocaust Memorial Day, is that I reminded myself that the day is not just about World War II. What happened in World War II with 6 million people, Jewish people, and millions of other people, communists, gay people, gypsies, disabled people that were persecuted. The way I can live with Holocaust Memorial Day at this time, when all this is going on, is by remembering that there are other genocides, there are other Holocausts, other systematic ethnic annihilations. And, you only have to think about, Rwanda, Cambodia, Bosnia, Darfur, Gaza now, Tamils, the Uyghurs or the Rohingyas. There's so much that the treatment of girls in Iran and Afghanistan. So there are a lot of oppressions and destructions of people going on in other countries. And to me, that's what Holocaust Memorial Day is about. And obviously it started with the 6 million Jews and the other millions that died at the hands of the Nazis, but it's more than that for me. Yeah. So that's my feeling around that.
Thanks, Viv, and it's very vulnerable to talk about, but yeah, I know it's something that you wanted to discuss because this year it does just feel a little bit like things have changed and shifted. So thank you.
Yeah.
I know that Viv is going to kick us off by sharing some of her poems. We're going to hear from her again at the end of the night. I want to introduce Viv a little bit to you. She's very modest and she wouldn't do so herself. Viv Fogel's poems have been published in various magazines and anthologies since the mid-70s. She has a collection out of Fly on the Wall, which you can see behind me, Imperfect Beginnings in 2023, and also Without Question in 2006, and 2 pamphlets. So do check those out. She has a website, www.vivfogel.co.uk, where you can find out all about those 4 books. And her poems and her work are influenced by having been adopted by refugee Holocaust survivors. And she's based in London, and since the mid-80s, she's worked as a psychotherapist. So I'll hand over to Viv, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your poems this evening.
I just have to say a confession, my website is not up to date, so you probably can't. I think I will get it together, but anyway, you can find out a bit more on it. Okay, so I'm going to, I'm really happy that you're here. Thank you. I'd like to start with 2 poems that are about events that happened because I was thinking about what does Holocaust mean, and it's destruction. Originally, it's destruction by fire. So there's a village in France in the Cevennes called Oradour-sur-Glane, and in 1944 there was a massacre that occurred. Some German soldiers looking for French resistance walked into the village and set fire to people in the church, in the fields. They were shot. So it was a mini Holocaust, if you like. Now it's been reconstructed, but the shell of the village is quite remarkable when you go around there. What was remarkable for me was to see trees and nature growing where there was so much destruction. There is a museum. Anyway, I won't say much more about it, but this is called Oradour-sur-Glane. It's tea time in Oradour. You can smell the apple flan baked by Grand-Mémé, red-cheeked at the hot oven, wiping her floury arms. You can see the smeared lipstick of a flustered wife in her polka dot frock, wiping away a kiss, hurrying back to her children who wait for her. It's tea time in Oradour. The soldiers entered. In the meadow behind the barn, they took the men and boys. The church was locked. Inside, women screaming, the children muffled by the roaring, falling timber. That hot, red hot afternoon in June at 16 hours 31, the hands on all the clocks and watches stopped. In the concrete grey and glass, it's the red I notice. Resin comb, button, the peeling paint of a toy truck, a child's scuffed shoe. Then the rosebud lips of a doll, hair singed, eyes glassy, wide. And then the markings in a child's book and a tin box with its ledger of receipts. And there's a charred scrap of red polka dots on white. At the blackened altar, below the stained window, pram wheels, pushchairs. It didn't take long. Picking a small red apple from the ground, I smell the tarte aux pommes. It's tea time in Oradour. So the next one is in the magazine Demos Rising, which is about protest and activism, which Isabel published. And I went to a meeting in support of women in Iran, and I was really touched and moved by a couple of lines from poems that I recognized because I'd written about the poet, which is in this magazine. I'm going to read those they're just 4 lines. And he was a Myanmar poet and activist, Ket T. I don't know if I pronounced it correctly. He was born in 1976 and he died in 2021. And I was horrified reading about how he died. But the 2 lines, 2 couplets that were put up in the Iranian conference and display were these: "They try to bury us, but they don't know we are the seeds." And the other couplet is, "They shoot us in the head, but they don't know that revolution dwells in the heart." So I'm going to read this poem. It's called Still Warm, and it's for Myanmar poet and activist Kiet Chi. They clawed out his heart, threw it on a slab with his other organs, sent it back in a jar. What did they hope to learn? How fierce with fight and protest, how fearless? They try to bury us, but they don't know we are the seeds. A megaphone for the silenced, his poems gave voice to those in fear, urged them on. What could his heart say now, severed from breath, its longing faint, its words turning grey? They shoot us in the head, but they don't know that revolution dwells in the heart. Cut loose, his poet heart soars above, drums down the darkening rage, the warrior's thunder. Listen, it is trying to tell you how to love. Can you hear it? Pounding. I'm going to read In Memoriam, which is in the book, and my mother, my adoptive mother, was gave up her family, if you like, and escaped to from Austria to London, and she went into service as a maid. She managed to get one brother out, and the other one was left behind. And her parents, who were elderly at the time, kind of perished in, and other relatives perished in Auschwitz. But so I imagine she was very traumatized. She developed bipolar. In those days, was called manic depression. But I imagined the vignettes that she had. Okay, this is called In Memoriam. For my mother Henrietta, her brother Carl, the uncle I never met, and for their parents Michael and Jetta, the grandparents I never knew, shot in the pine forests of Mali Trostanek, Belarus. And just to say, the word Zayda means grandfather in Yiddish. 1. Mother. Memories stalk from room to room, saucepans, boiling bones, kettle streams, shower steams, smell of fear, guilt-furred tongue, names, faces she recalls, sidesteps, broken glass, night terrors, whimpering, raging, numbers on her arm turned raw with picking. 2. Uncle. Died 1939, aged 27. As the soldiers advanced, her baby brother, blue eyes, blonde curls, cravat, keyboard fingers, nightclub jazz, knew what he had to do. She wept for him and buried him with the family's sorrow. 3. Grandparents. Zayda's neat and even script. The sunlight dazzling through the trees. Oh, there's a vivid blue butterfly. We're still waiting for our visas. the paper he wrote on, tissue thin, fragile. Work hard, be polite, keep your head down. We will soon be together. 4. Sunlight in a forest and a vivid blue butterfly. And there's just one more. The cover on the book is of a sculpture that I saw in 2014 and at the museum in Berlin, and it made a clanking sound and we were encouraged to walk over it, but I couldn't, so I sat and listened. I couldn't because for the reasons in the poem, but it was a memorial sculpture. And it was called Shalechet. It's still there, and it means fallen leaves. And I cannot walk over you. Fallen leaves do not clink like this beneath your feet, but these leaves clank like steel plates in a breaker's yard, chattels and goods broken down beneath you. The continuous clatter punctuated by faint chimes, cries, shalechet. There are other holocausts, other stories, other memories. But this is what I know, is what I came from. And for you, my body remembers. Fallen leaves are russet, crisp underfoot, but you melt slowly. Your bones blacken, calcify, your mouths gasp shafts of gaseous light. Okay, that's my bit for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Viv. It's a beautiful and a naturally harrowing start to the evening. And thank you so much for reading so well.
You'd never believe that I write funny comedic poems, do you?
That's true, yeah.
Every month that I do. That's another part of me. Okay.
Now I'd love to introduce you to Barsa Ray. So Barsa Ray was shortlisted in the Book Edit Writers' Prize and the Asian Writer First Novel Competition. She was awarded a mentorship by Peepal Tree Press to work on her novel with the Jalak Award winner Jacob Ross. Her poetry publications include Magma, Skiazines, Filigree of Peepal Tree Press, and Beautiful Dragons anthologies. She has an MA in creative writing from the University of Leeds. And I believe she's going to read poetry from Demos Rising, our protest anthology.
Thank you, Isabel. So this is called Voice. Amma and I stand in the line. There are many people before us. We wait for ages. My legs feel heavy. I try to sit down, but Amma won't let go of my hand. I tug hard. She looks at me then and picks me up. Abba has gone to get water, but I won't drink any. Poor Bobo is all alone. He'll be thirsty too. Abba made me leave him behind. He must be so scared. I cried and cried when we got on the boat. Why did Abba say I couldn't bring Bobo? I saw a girl who brought her teddy bear. I look for the girl, but she's lost somewhere. My eyes feel heavy. I rest my head on Amma's shoulder. When I open my eyes, I see Abba's arms, his curly hair under his hat. He's carrying me. I kick out. He tries to calm me, but I hit at his face till he puts me down. I take off. I run and run till I can't breathe. My feet stumble. I come to a stop. There's dust everywhere. People everywhere. No Amma. I walk towards where I think they were, but I can't see them. I can't call out, so I cry. I go up to women who look like Amma. They're not her. Then suddenly I hear Abba's voice. Imi, Imi. I run like mad towards him. He swings me up. They have accepted us. You can rest now. I have been sleeping on your shoulder, I sign. He laughs and kisses me. God is merciful. We made a safe passage. We can start over. I'll get you another teddy. I look at him. He doesn't understand. Bobo was my voice. Without him, no one will hear me. Thank you.
All the more harrowing to hear a young narrator and voice, I feel. Thank you so much for bringing that to life, Barsa. And thank you very much for joining us from India as well at midnight, as you said earlier. And now I'd love to introduce to you George Szirtes. George Szirtes was born in Hungary and he came to England as a refugee where he trained as an artist. His 12th book of poetry, Real, in 2004, won the T.S. Eliot Prize, for which he has been twice shortlisted since. That's a brilliant track record, George. His latest is Fresh Out of the Sky in 2021. And his memoir, The Photographer at 16 in 2019, was awarded the James Tate Black Prize in 2020. And he's the co-winner of the International Booker Translators Prize, as well as numerous others. And it was a pleasure recently, Rosanna McGlone, the journalist, interviewed George for The Process of Poetry, which is the book that we released in December last month, and George is talking about his craft. So if you are interested in that, take a look at the book. And now I'll hand over to George.
Thank you very, very much indeed, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this. Yes, I have a kind of Holocaust background, but I don't write about it as though I were a witness there, partly because I know I was not. What I'm going to do is I read you a part of one of the longest poems I wrote. Don't worry, I'm not going to read the whole of it. It's just the beginning of a poem called Metro, which is about the removal of my mother from Budapest to Ravensbrück concentration camp first, and then Penning, another camp later. Where it begins in a room, which I remember, an incident, where I've asked my parents, I'm only about 6 or 7, if there is a God. And they tell me, go and ask your aunt, who's in the next room. The metaphor of the whole poem called Metro is the underground railway, and about the way the underground can be sensed and heard, and sometimes felt from above. So I'll read a little bit of this. My aunt was sitting in the dark, alone, half sleeping, when I crept into her lap. The smell of old women now creeps over me, an insect friction against bone and spittle, in an ironed dress smoother than shells gathered by the sea. Her tongue between her teeth like a scrap of cloth, in an eye of misted glass, her spectacles with the image of a lit room beyond the double doors, beyond the swing between the doors, and my head in her bosom, at rest on soft flesh and hard corsetry, and in that darkness, tired and perfumed, smiling. Across the city, darkened rooms are breeding ghosts of elderly women, nodding off over the books their grandchildren are reading, or magazines, or Bibles, or buttons to be sewn, with letters, patterns, recipes, advice. Some of them might have the radio on, like her, my aunt, who will remain alone within that room in which I visit her, ascending to her skin, which is rough about the mouth, with hard nodules like rice. Her face glows like a lantern, and she says, there is a God, the God of the Jews, of Moses and Elias, but this is not a time to speak of him. And here my aunt is happy, and her sister, both happy in their roles. And the child is happy in the reading of a tale that ends in triumph over the wild succubi of his imagination, the dwarfish furies of the forest, the lank rain-coated ghosts who pester the living daylights out of night, the stepmothers who live beyond the pale. The city waits like an armchair. A slight woman sits there, watching, as the evenings shrink about her, and the city opens its arms and welcomes her to its administration. The metro provides a cheap, unending ride if you switch trains below the city. There's a whole war to be fought under the pavements. I can hear the faint thunder of artillery in Vörösmarty Square. The cobbles shake, move gently from side to side with microscopic accuracy, and ice creams wobble in their goblets. The cavity beneath the streets is filled with the blare of surface traffic. The city is all dreams and talk and rumors of talk. The place below is treacherous. You don't know who your friends are, who you are yourself. It is everything that is past. The hidden half, a subcutaneous universe in which our fate is to be the dramatis personae of geographers who place us more precisely than we can ourselves. I place a woman on a train and pack her off to Ravensbrück. I send out a troop of soldiers to summon the Jews of this fair city. Off she goes, repeating her unknown journey, and I must look to gauge the distances between us nicely. I see a voice, the greyest of grey shadows. Lead me, Psychopompos, through my found city, down into the underground. That is from the very first part of Metro. And it concerns my grandmother, but really its real subject is my mother. When she is removed from Budapest, I don't follow her into Ravensbrück because, frankly, I don't think I could. This is a memory of her who never admitted that she was Jewish, but she died, leaving us with the belief that she was Lutheran, or she was not. Her job was to be a photographer, and as part of being a photographer, she learned how to hand color and to touch up photographs. This is watching her over her lightbox at home, and there's a little hint, I suppose, of a Jewish past in there. When she leaned over the lightbox, her face shone as though she herself had been the source of light, a moon to a diffused rectangular sun. Transparent bands of film flocked in tight orthodox curls over the edge of it, and her hair too fell forward, black as night. Her hands made nervous movements, delicate, bird-like, calculated, unerringly precise, her head swaying, a harshly underlit mask that caricatured the familiar face. Whatever it was she was giving herself to demanded close attention. The edifice of her presence multiplied and grew in shadows on the wall, and the dark hair swung to and fro. Meanwhile, her fingers drew the shadows of light images from the air, till the tension told on her back and wrists and eyes, and she sat up straight, as if whatever prayer she'd been engaged on was over. The brush lies on the table. The film curls on the floor. The light in the box dazzles. No one dies in photographs. Then she bends down once more. I read a couple of very, very short ones to finish with. And these are as much, I suppose, about exile as about, but it was an exile that was partly due very much to the Holocaust and the persecutions that sometimes followed. Refugee. Meeting refugees is much like meeting yourself in a dull mirror. Can you see yourself? Is that really you? Your eyes are familiar, but I can't place you. The matter of place meets time when it no longer matters. What's your name? Tobacco. I meet my father in a dream. He's standing at a tall mirror. He enters it. I follow. We emerge from it like a double act. Leaves are drifting down in the alley, scent of autumn and tobacco. Wait, I call after him. Woodland scene. Somewhere in the wood are the footprints of those not yet out of it. Let's try to find them. The wood is full of footprints after all. The trees grow densely there. Earth is soft and receptive. Tread carefully and leave no prints of your own. And I'll finish this with before lights out. What are you writing? The light in a room before it goes off. And then? The shadows words leave on the page. Can you read them? What I can read is a turned off light. Where are the words? They are waiting to speak in the time the bright room leaves them. Thank you very much for listening and inviting me.
Thank you so much, George. That was gorgeous. Such sensory quality to your writing, and felt like I was in a dream listening to the vivid memories. So thank you. I'd love to introduce to you Beth Brooke. Beth is a retired teacher. She was born in the Middle East, where she spent the important years of her childhood, and she's now living in Dorset. Her debut collection, A Landscape with Birds, is out with Hedgehog Press, and she's since had 2 recent collections out. I believe one of them is about Dorset as well, so maybe she'll tell us a little bit about that later. Her work has recently been nominated for a Pushcart Prize as well, so it's fantastic to see your work flourishing, Beth, and thank you very much for reading for us tonight. Beth's going to read from Demos Rising.
Thank you so much. I feel truly honoured to have been asked to do this. So I have 2 poems in Demos Rising. The first one is a poem called In That Deep Water, and it's one of those documentary poems because almost all of the words in it are taken from transcripts of interviews that I found or had with people. There's just one word that you might want to know, which is the word aman. In Arabic can mean kind of protection, safety. Deep in that water, a poem for 7 voices. Poet's prelude. Water, the sound of something ripping. Somewhere, something is tearing apart. Cloud covers the moon. We cannot tell the devils in the shadows from the angels weeping. We cling to one another, don't dare to breathe. A breath could so easily become our tipping point. Doa. We paid them money and it was too late to turn back. They rammed the boat, hold it, said, let the fishers eat your flesh. The sea went black people screaming, water crashing. We almost drowned in the bodies of the already dead. Mahmoud. When you are poor, you cannot even choose how to escape. I was a carpenter in Damascus before the war. It does not seem to matter where we ran. Death followed us everywhere, from Misrata and into the sea. My daughter left her words in that deep water, and we left our son. Afghani youth. They give you a knife, sharp, stab, or the police will gut you, send you back. A man was all we wanted. We are not to blame. One man waded out, brought us to land in our own tongue. A man. We had no choice. Bombardment or take a boat. Gias, volunteer in Lesbos. I went on the third, laptop, tickets, found where the boats were coming. At the first one, I left everything, bag, laptop, my everything, went into the water to pull them in. There was a woman with her child, and I pulled them out of the water onto the beach, and she said, "At home, I wash my husband's feet. Why do you kneel to me?" Maybe, I told her, it is a man. Priti Patel, UK Home Secretary. The do-gooders, the lefty lawyers, the Labour Party, all defend the indefensible. We need to stop these people coming, making endless legal claims to remain. I hope that the whole House can come together to send a clear message that crossing the channel in this lethal way is not the way to come to our country. Postscript. UNICEF. There are 5.6 million Syrian refugees, more than 6 million internally displaced. Half of these are children. And this one is called At Kramatorsk Station. The dead have left their luggage at the station. It litters the concourse, lies along the platform in untidy heaps. A child's rucksack, pink and unicorned, rests against a wall. There are suitcases, clothes disgorged, the optimism of their colours at odds with the drying blood. There is a little knitted horse, some infant's treasure. It waits quietly to be retrieved, scooped up by small hands, cuddled in relief at being found. Plastic bags of groceries, food for the journey, are spilled, torn. Already they are beginning to spoil. The dead huddle, wait for the trains they will not catch. They are bewildered, wonder what has happened here to make them leave so much untidily behind at Kramatorsk Station. Thank you.
I know it's strange having silence, Beth, but we're clapping in our minds for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's always gorgeous hearing verbatim poems because you can't really get more powerful than the actual testimony, can you? Now it's my pleasure to hand back to Viv Fogel to close us off the evening. She's going to read some work from Imperfect Beginnings and also some new work, which I've not heard. So I very much look forward to that. And I believe some of them are going to be around the war in Gaza as well.
I'm so pleased I chose you all to be here. It's really lovely to hear you, Beth and Barsa. Well, she's gone, I don't know. Anyway, and George, of course. Okay, I'm going to read one about my father, which is in the book. My father came from Dresden in Germany, and he was, well, the poem will say it all. My father sold cigarettes to the Nazis. Blue-eyed and handsome, he nodded and grinned at them through the coffee houses of Berlin, the cakes and the cabaret, a sweet tooth and an eye for women. He wrote funny verse, made his friends laugh, turned horror into humor, played the joker, protected me from the truth. My father loved to polish wooden banisters, brass door handles, candlesticks, our boots, always polishing. Buchenwald was his camp, but Butlins it was not. I wasn't meant to hear about the officer's leather belt, his polished boots, of the baby tossed into the air, skull cracking beneath the boot. And once he upturned his kitchen table, the kitchen table, mouth foaming, as plates slid, cracking to the floor. He died a year before the wall came down, the year my baby was born. I sat by his bed and fed him, as once he fed me. I stroked his baby head, made him smile at my jokes as his watery eyes were fading. I traced his burnt, scarred arm, tapped my fingers along numbers the same blue-grey as his veins, longing to unlock his story. He held my baby in his arms just once, a little awkward, a little shy, a big man, grown small. So this is a new one. It's published in a magazine called Artemis, and I've since cut one of the verses out. So when your parents don't speak about what happened to them, you pick it up anyway, the inherited trauma, of course, and you learn certain things. So this is what I learned from them. My mother taught me to act as if, to pretend things were okay, even if they weren't, to mask, to keep my dreams under wraps, but not forget them. My father taught me you could live a secret life. We discovered his later, or imagine one anyway. Keep it light, make up stories. He never called it lying. She taught me to keep my head down, not stand out. He taught me to shine, think big, take risks, trust. So I wore her mask and lightly made up stories. Her madness and her shame silenced me. His silence became my rock. So, like George, if you were not actually there, somehow something in you knows and picks up from the environment, inherited or transmitted trauma memories. So this is on not writing the Holocaust. I was not there. Yet when I see dense forests, barbed wire, rail tracks, something in me remembers. The stench of it slips between the lines, urges me to transcribe, make sense of it. But I can't. I was not there. Striped pajamas, a soft leather valise, a postcard from the Stoke potteries, funnels of dark smoke unfurling. A lost child's shoe by the canal, the absence of birdsong, a field of stones and silence. Many will roll their eyes, move on. So I do not write about the Holocaust. I was not there. I was not there. This is the first poem in the book, and a lot of, in the book, it's actually not grim at the end. It's a lot of things about children and redemption and love and nature, the love of nature, and all the things that heal. But the beginning, because of the theme today, I'm not reading those, except I might read one short one at the end. But there's a parallel between when you're adopted, you're taken away from your mother, and when you're an exile or a refugee or asylum seeker, you have to, you're taken away, or you take yourself away, or have to separate from your motherland. So there's a displacement, and I feel great affinity, having worked and still supervising people that work with refugees. So this is Exiled 1. For one precious moment, you were my whole world, safe, holding and mine, then gone. I was alone, no roots, no ground. The landscape changed. Familiar smells, textures vanished. The terrain became hostile. 2. Torn from your homeland, you strain towards a dream beyond your grasp. The fruits you reach for are a mirage. The sand slips away. Now is the waiting game. Questions, papers returned, visas granted or delayed. In yellow rooms you wait. You sit watching the clock, not daring to hope. Stranger, I welcome you, rootless as I, to this bitter-sweet land. Just going to read 2 more. The next one's called Ahmad's Pool, and it's got a few stories in it about things being uncovered, refugees coming, you know, the waterlogged man that comes aboard on land, and there's a story of another man, and also a client of mine. So it's a few stories. I hope you can decipher them. Ahmad's Pool. The theropod prints embedded in rocks were hidden until now. The Library of Alexandria is still submerged under the ocean. What lies beneath the surface often remains unreachable. His unpaid debts, his shame, how he begged her to forgive. The waterlogged man who staggers ashore from a capsized dinghy collapses, trembling, into the arms of a volunteer. His head drops onto her shoulder. She rubs his back. For a moment, he is in the arms of his mother. Tearful, a loving father, how he packed his bag and left. The chalk and blood-streaked face in shock, hauled from concrete and twisted girders, the clutch of civilians clawing dust to uncover, a hand to clasp, things as they were before. They found him hanging from a tree, his bag spilled open beneath him. In halting English, Ahmad describes his life as a stagnant pool where nothing lives or moves. Each night, he stands in moonlight, watching it shimmer, the way light shimmers, the way light becomes a dart of silver, a movement, a silver fish. The next night, there are more, and his pool starts to breathe. Back home, I line my homemade pond with garden soil. It's the wrong sort. It muddies and clouds the water. If I wait patiently, it will clear. And the very last one. is about a sense of home. Of course, we have to find it when we're on foreign land in our own, inside us. But this is a place that's a beloved place of mine in Chania, Old Town, Crete. So I am home. The synagogue of Etz Chaim, once vandalized and left in ruins, is renovated now. Its star-gated courtyard, a sanctuary, olive trees, shade, stillness. The brass sign reads, "All faiths and everyone welcome here." Tombstone fragments, slow heat of afternoon, orange blossoms sweeten the air. Beyond the walled arch, a glimpse of harbour and Cretan blue. Lilac misted mountains surround and hold me. In Arabic, Hani means joy. In Hebrew, Hania is peace. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Viv. I think it's nice to end on that note of peace and hope. And I think despite all the poems this evening, being about conflict, protest, and remembering awful traumatic events, hopefully we can all find some kind of hope in the fact that there is such sensitivity here and such empathy in everyone's work. And I know that empathy is something which we all have in troves and could probably resolve quite a lot of conflicts if we had more empathy for our neighbours. Thank you so much for being with us all this evening, everyone. I'm going to total up and I'll email around the full total that we've raised for Doctors Without Borders. I believe it's around £60, which is amazing. Go towards so important work. And if you do want to read more of the poets, please do. I'll share their websites in the email tomorrow as well. And these were the 3 books that we heard from this evening: Demos Rising, Imperfect Beginnings. My screen's gonna blur them out, but you can see that one behind. And then we heard from George, who has so many collections, but has recently been interviewed in the process of poetry. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'll leave the Zoom room open if you want to chat to any of the poets that have been here this evening for a couple of minutes. And apart from that, that concludes our evening.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Isabel, for putting this on.
Thank you. It was lovely.
Thank you. It's really good to see you.